All right, for those of you who may have difficulty finding elastic, or if you'd rather use something you have at home, this works great. Ponytail tie or rubber band or hair band. Cut it, tie knots at the end of it. Now you could put a safety pin through it and pull it through your casing that way. But I think that you'll see, and every time I watch this, I think I'm going to poke myself in the finger. Be careful. But if you put your safety pin through like this, you can see it's really bulky. The casing would have to be pretty big to get that through with it folded back like that. So rather than do that, I'm going to use either a piece of string, or in this case I didn't have string handy, so I used 4 threads. I've got 2 threads folded in half, each folded in half, so there's 4 threads, so it's strong enough. So that's a safety pin attached to one end. And the other end, I'm going to take and tie right above the knot. So there would be ready to go, though I would recommend a little bit longer string than I had shown in the first picture there. But I'd say, it depends how long your casing is. I'd leave about 8 inches or so. But see what happens when you fold it back. It's bulky. That's not going to work well either. Same problem as with the safety pin before. So if you thread your needle, and what I'm going to do is take the needle and put it through the knot so it comes out the other side of the knot and pulls this straight through the casing. Pliers are probably going to be needed to get it through. And now you've got that little end that could cause you some problems, so that you can clip off close to the knot. And now that'll pull through your casing much more easily. Rethread your safety pin onto the end, or tie it onto the end, onto the safety pin. All right, here's your casing, ready on your cap. This works on the ponytail cap or this cap, wherever you need to have an elastic casing. So through the hole there on the right, there's the hole that the ribbon will eventually go through. You put your safety pin through the hole and into the casing. Now that first seam, the seam allowance points to the left, which is great. You won't get caught on it. But when you come to this one, the seam allowance is pointing to the right. It's a little trickier sometimes. What I normally do is I take the casing once I get to the seam allowance, and especially if it's in the way, I'll kind of squeeze it down to open it up inside. Now this one I didn't have problems getting past that casing, but you see here I'm just pointing out you've got to make sure you have enough string, or it just gets to be a little more complicated. So make sure you have long enough string or thread. And now you're going to fish that in right down to the end, take that end, and what I did is just put a safety pin through here to hold it so the knot can't pull through the hole and you'd have to start over again. So now pull through and let that pull all the way through, and until the knot eventually will come out the end. And then once it does, you can see how you think the stretchiness needs to be. And watching this again, I think I probably would have left more inside of there. See, I was originally thinking this needed to be about 3 inches. But I think on this cap, I'd go with 3 to 4 inches. So that's 3. I think I'd be more likely to leave it at 4, but it depends. If you have a ponytail that's going to be sticking out, or maybe your head is bigger. So there is where you're going to be stitching it down. Now, my thumbnail is about where I want that knot to be. So if you're going to leave 4 inches, I would just leave it like it is. If you're going to go down to 3 inches, you could knot this. Of course, that also depends on how big your ponytail headband or hairband is. So now hang on to it when you pull it back through. But I let go of it. But thankfully it didn't go in too far, because I've had it happen and I've had to re-thread it. Trying to remember, sometimes I had to even open up the seam to get at it, but at any rate, hang on to it. You'll be a lot happier with yourself. So there it is, and that's where it'll be tacked down. Now you want to just take a safety pin through there and hold it. Now here's what it looks like after it's all stitched. I've got the top stitching done, the ribbons in and everything. But the reason I showed this first is I wanted you to see this is what we're going for, and that is what you're going to be, that's where you're going to be stitching it, right there with the knot on the opposite side of it. You can just see that knot right there inside the circle. And you're going to stitch over the top with a zigzag. So we recommend you go with a wide zigzag, the widest you can. This is my backup sewing machine, that's why it changed to white. And 0 is the stitch length. All right, so you're going to have it pinned at this point, remember, so be very careful. You don't let it pop back. Make sure it's safely pinned. And then set your presser foot down. The knot will be towards the front, but see, I'm showing stitching back and forth over the top, and right under the presser foot is where the knot is. So once that stitching is done, then you'll go around to your top stitching and all the rest of it. But here, of course, I already had it all done, and that's going to be what your cap looks like when it's finished.